Welcome everybody to my current favorite topic of the month, automation, RBAC, and visibility. So how many of you guys, just a quick question, in Teams are still doing everything either through the TAC or through individual PowerShell scripts? No hands. Wow, nice. All right. So, voila. I am me. I'm a mountain nut with a UC problem, and even more so, I have an automation problem. I come out of the engineering side of the house. I've spent the last 8-9 years doing nothing but the back-end side for enterprises, doing either direct routing or SBC integrations to the various platforms, and then of course assisting with migrations, deployments, all the fun stuff, and bemoaning the entire time the lack of a comprehensive automation solution to repeat everything we've done customer by customer by customer by customer. So focusing on Teams in this particular case, and before we do, thank you to these folks who make this possible. I'm going to start with why I hated doing what I was doing the way I was doing it. I'm sure plenty of you guys can empathize with me when you got started on your Teams journey, especially if you had hundreds or thousands of users to turn on or to manage. Every single user you wanted to, set up, you had to go in and you had this, some of you might have had shorter, some of you might have had longer list of tasks you had to perform. Bring up Power, if you're like me, you brought up PowerShell, you signed in, you made sure you had all your users' information, and if you were lucky, you had a script that was ready to read from an Excel sheet. If you're unlucky, you're typing in a whole crud ton of information for every user, hoping you don't have a typo and hoping everything you've been given is correct. It really, 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 really ruined my life because I was spending many of my nights doing migrations for people, just sitting there doing nothing but that, and then I'd have to get up at 8 in the morning and help people plan the rest of their, migrations or their environment. So coming at this primarily from an enterprise or carrier or an MSP perspective, lots and lots of data is involved. When we're talking Teams, we're talking you've got your policies, you've got your number inventories, you've got your user personas. If you're doing direct routing, you've got all of the routing controls, you've got all the routing policies themselves. It's ugly. You've got to build it, you've got to make sure it works, and then you've got to make sure everyone gets the right assignment. And there's no real easy way of confirming that everything you did was right. There's no audit log, there's no easy way to roll back if you screw everything up, if you take the service down. Fortunately, if you're just running calling plans or you're running, in this case, Operator Connect, it's a lot more forgiving, but if you're doing direct routing and then you're dealing with E911 with all of these things, it's just ugly. Hopefully you've got more than just me working on your project and you've got plenty of skilled staff, but skilled staff are expensive and we don't like spending our time repeating ourselves. Additionally, doing everything manually, especially if you're trying to say go from Cisco or Avaya, the two biggies out there, to Teams, not everyone working on the Teams side or on the Cisco side understands the other. So one of the things, especially in voice, that we're finding is a salesperson. I worked before I worked for Voss and now independently. I worked for one of the largest voice integrators in the US, Converge One, and we constantly found that our sales folks didn't understand Teams. They understood Cisco, and so they would sell feature matched replacement. They don't convert. You can't do certain things in those old systems into the new, and you'll get a lot of times where you'll get a customer that comes to you and says, okay, here's my user base, I want to go from here, here's the phone numbers, and then here are the features I want, and you have to go in and you have to explain, this doesn't work, that doesn't work, and you miss 3/4 of the users who are using features that are non-transferable. How do you find those? Well, it's a manual job that no one wants to do. And then, on the other end of it, the process is insecure, right? You're emailing back and forth, or if you're lucky, you're doing everything through Teams, which is, hopefully end-to-end encrypted, depending on the channels you're using. You're sending Excel sheets back and forth, and hopefully everyone's doing it in Teams and keeping it in SharePoint, but then inevitably they send it to the site, and the site starts emailing, and you start losing your versioning, and access credentials then become an issue because now you're dealing with the customer, or if you're within the enterprise, you're trying to give all of your your admins the ability to do these things, and all of a sudden you're going, oh crap, my tier 2 help desk admin has full access to our entire voice infrastructure in Teams, and he or she shouldn't. Or my site admin for North America is affecting my European users. What the heck? Not to mention, PowerShell requires basic authentication still. Not all of the correct commandlets allow for application authentication. It's a lot of issues with all of that manual labor. So where did the time go? Why was I working 80, 100-hour work weeks and, not being very happy at the end of it? Well, it was all of these different things. I was trying to get data out of legacy systems, and as I'm sure many of you can attest, getting it from your customers or from another telco team can be impossible. They're busy. They don't want to give up their work. They don't want to give up all that data. Well, you got to get it. Then you've got to make sure that data stays consistent. I can't tell you the number of times I've gone and had a site say, oh yeah, we've lost 30% of our users and we've hired a whole bunch here, and they're coming in 24 hours before the cut. It's absolutely asinine. Inconsistencies just go nuts. And how many of you have a really good solid number inventory and an ability to manage it? Right? One of the biggest complaints we get from anyone managing a telco system is, what are my numbers? Who's using what and how are they allocated? Licensing. Microsoft does not make licensing easy, right? Do I have E5? Do I have F1? Do I have the phone system license? Do I need resource accounts, common area, shared devices, whatever they're naming it nowadays? Teams Premium now if you need the advanced features. Does the user have the right services? Do they have the license but no service enabled? Are they over-provisioned, under-provisioned? How are we going to assign these licenses? Well, now you've got to do that all manually. Right? Hopefully you've got an AD admin who's using Azure AD group licensing and doing it intelligently to save you a boatload of time, but half the time they're not. And then they don't want to give you licensing permissions to do it. All in all, keeping track of all of this, making sure everything's up to date, your scripts, it's just nuts. Well, that's the manual method that historically we started with Teams. And that was fine. Teams was new, we were learning it. Many of us were coming out of Skype for Business where, hey, PowerShell was not unfamiliar. It was the same commandlets for the most part. Well, then we got Microsoft's grand gift to the world. Power Apps, Power Automate. And someone, not me, figured out, oh, wait a second. Azure has this funky function called functions, where I can execute PowerShell out of Azure. I no longer need to make sure I have a server on-premise that has the proper modules, that has bypasses proxies, all the different things, make sure it has TLS 1.2 going, all of that fun stuff. I can just securely store the credential. It may still be basic auth, but I can securely store the credential in an Azure key store or in an Azure credential and have it just drop right into there and execute. And the cool thing about Power Apps is you can, at a basic level, restrict who can access them. So if I want to say, hey, engineers A, B, C, D, and E, but not F, G, H, and I can enable users, I can say, you guys are the only ones who can upload a document or a new user to my Power App. So I can go in and say, okay, I want these users on this date to go whatever, depending on how I built the Power App, and it can then store that in a SharePoint list, an Excel sheet, a database, whatever your choice is, and then at the appropriate time, whether that's a trigger within the Power App or within the data set itself and you have it checking, it can kick off the Azure function. Well, that worked great, especially as we were getting into years 2 and 3 of Teams being out, right? We didn't have a lot of third-party solutions that had really dug in and figured out how to do this. And I had an insurance customer who did it. They basically said, we're going to take an Excel sheet and we're going to put the user information in there. We're going to put the phone number we want them to have, the date we want them to cut, any policies we want them to have, and then we're going to have this Power App once every hour go through. Actually, it was once every day, I'm sorry. Go through and check, and then 2 weeks ahead of the date, it's going to send out a pre-formatted email. Hey, get ready. Here's what's coming. 1 week ahead. Hey, it's coming on this date. A few days ahead, it's coming. Day of, it just executed. It just moved the users. So the properly, credentialed person who had access to the sheet on the back end, the list, could edit it at any time, but not everyone. Now this was great for the migration, for the initial setup of teams. What this didn't help us with was the day-to-day management, right? So I've got all these users in teams, but all of a sudden a new feature comes out and I need to add a license, or I need to change a policy, or all of a sudden we're assigning physical handsets and we want to assign IP phone policies to them. Or miracle of miracle, we're going to deploy an actually functioning survivable branch appliance and we need to apply a policy to them. Well, then you have to completely write new scripts in PowerShell, you have to write a new Power App, you have to go through and do all of that. So this is what I like to call step one to automated and secure management, because A, it is automated in a most basic format. It has much more security, and you can put some basic RBAC on it. You're not relegated to the Microsoft provided RBAC roles. Sorry, that was step two, not step one. I got behind on my slides. Regardless, when doing this, one of the cool things I found, and especially as Power Apps matured, you could create your own API trigger endpoints. So I had one other customer who'd basically gotten from this Blue Cross affiliate a copy of what they'd done, and they built it. And they said, well, we want to trigger this from our, I can't remember what their ITSM, it was not ServiceNow, but it was some funky whatever. They said, we want to trigger this using an API that we're going to send from whatever the solution was. And they were able to build an API endpoint for it in Power Apps. Well, that's really where we start getting into, here we go, third-party solutions and step three into the automation journey. So one of the things we're finding now is there's a lot more complexity. The phone system has gained its feature set, it's really coming into its own, it's coming into its maturity. And it's a lot easier to say, hey, you want to get off of these legacy, very feature-rich PBXs and onto Teams? Well, it's an easier sell, right? Most of the features are there. You still have to get over the fact that you're going from a phone system to a UC system, and there's some changes in behavior. But what we can do now is we can say, all right, we're going to take all of that manual labor that you did before, where you went to your losing system. And regardless of whether that losing system is going to be integrated into the new Teams UC system, Teams phone system, we're going to figure out what you were using and try and figure out how you were using it and why you were using it. And we can take that discovery and we can say, okay, you had yay many thousands of Cisco users. You have yay many handsets, yay many were SCCP, yay many were SIP, yay many were analog. And you had yay many users using features A, B, C, D, and E, and even identify those users, right? So that we can get, with the different toolings and the automation that third parties have built, we can come out and we can say, okay, here's what you've got now. I'm not spending hundreds of hours digging through your old phone system hoping I don't miss something. I know what I'm looking at. I've got all of these issues, and I've got all of these users that I need to modify. I need to, when they go to Teams, I need to know, hey, here's their primary phone number. This second phone number, which looked like a shared line appearance, is really a delegation. And this other shared line appearance, I need to convert into a call queue or an auto attendant to a call queue. Then we can take all that data, and again, depending on the tool you're using, you can set up your migration and you can say, okay, here are my personas, assuming you've properly defined personas. Here are the templates I want. A user in this location gets this set of policies and numbers from, assuming you have a number inventory solution, from this block, or they keep an existing number if they had it. And you can do your data mappings between the two, and at the end of that, you can basically say, click go, and the solution on the back end takes care of all that PowerShell for you. Because unfortunately, Teams can still only, from a voice perspective, be managed via PowerShell. We don't have a Graph API or any API endpoint to manage the phone side of things yet. And it's still a ways away, according to Ilya, who in the last fireside chat said the API is a long ways away. But we can use PowerShell still. When that's all done, a lot of these tools, not just the one for whom I work, we can take care of the day two management. So the TAC is a nice tool, but that's all it is, a nice tool. It doesn't have bulk user management. It doesn't freely allow you to do group assignments of policies to say, hey, if you're a member of an AD group, you get policy X, Y, or Z. That's now a premium feature, which baffles me, but you know, Microsoft licensing is Microsoft licensing. You get some analytics out of it. The CQD is okay. It's not spectacular, but it's okay. Not to mention the E911 management leaves much to be desired in the way you can manage that or your CQD network endpoint information. So with the automated assisted migrations, we can come in and we can take a lot of that complex work that took hundreds of hours and we can say, okay, let's knock that down. Let's take it from 12 to 18 months. Let's make it less than 6 months. And if I'm your architect, primary, high-level engineer, and I'm working for you and you're billing the customer for me at my rate, well, why wouldn't you want to say, you know what, you've done 20% of the users, you've proved that your workflows work, you've done all the, the automation's all configured, I'm going to hand this off to my managed service desk. I'm going to hand this off to my low-cost technical resources and let them finish it off. And then if there are any errors or issues during the migration, I'll just call you in and you can actually deal with the things you need to deal with. With support, right? Like I mentioned, you can save the time of your really experienced engineers and you can say, okay, if we have an issue, come and help us solve this. And with the third-party tools, we're able to much more cleanly extract any of those PowerShell errors. So if any of you are familiar with writing PowerShell scripts, and if you're doing kind of the legacy for each loops for enabling bulks of users, getting the error logs out of that can be a pain. And there are different ways of doing it, and whether you're saving or you're doing the catch, and then you try and analyze it. Well, one of the cool things we can do with third-party solutions that are supported by the third-party solution developers on top of it all, thank you, we can start saying, okay, we're going to look for these errors and we're going to flag them and we're going to put them right in front of your face. We're going to say these users failed because they weren't licensed or the numbers were overused or you're out of licenses. The discovery, as I said, you can go from hundreds of hours to less than a month. We can automate a lot of that. And then from a staffing perspective, instead of needing a crap ton of SBC, well, I shouldn't say SBC engineers, but UC engineers who understand, if you're doing direct routing, all of the routing protocols, you can engage them to do the design and then have a couple of them set it up, make sure the automation's ready to rock, you're off and ready to go, and they can keep doing what they do, especially if you're an MSP or a service provider or a carrier. One of the things that these solutions, at least in my opinion, should have, and not all of them do, and some of them are new, some of them are just coming into the side of the industry. Straight up the automation. We need a good engine. We need an engine that is powerful, intelligent, and open. We need to be able to query it any number of ways, whether it's through a native GUI that we, the solution provider, have built, or through an API, right? We need to have a simple tool set, right? None of this remembering, oh, no, you don't use set CS user / line URI is X / enterprise voice enabled is true / blah, da, 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 da. We just need to be able to say, hey, turn user on from Microsoft. Here's the template I want, or here's the phone number I want, and here's the policies I want to assign them. Go, done, move on, right? It needs to be predictable. Not all solutions can do this, but most do. They at least give you an audit. Who did what and what happened? Some you have to set to debug levels to see all the steps of the process. Some it's a native feature. Some give you the ability to roll back, right? The ability to say, hey, I've gone from Cisco to Teams, and if the solution ties into the legacy system from a MACD perspective to be able to provision on, say, Cisco or whatnot, you can say, hey, let me deprovision this user from Cisco as we're going along. That's steps 1 through 10. And then steps 11 through 20 potentially are, here's the Microsoft provisioning steps. And if any one of those steps fails, I'm just going to automatically undo each of those steps that preceded, and all of a sudden the user's back on their home system, no effort from you except for, hey, user failed, here's why. You can come back, figure out what's wrong with that user, move them. Insights. Now, I don't expect these to replace your heavy level, network level, quality monitoring tools, but we should at least have some insights on what's going on in your tenant, right? How many users are using what? Are the licenses actually being used? Ideally, are there phone calls being placed? How many? Are they good? Are they bad? Not a lot of data, right? That's what these other tools are for. And some of the automation suite vendors here at the conference absolutely have those deep dive solutions, right? You've probably all heard of IR Prognosis or Nectar, which are the big names out there for doing such. But from the smaller side, you've got Code Software. As you go up from there, you've got Of course, IR Prognosis, you've got Nectar, you've got Voss, there are a lot of companies that have that additional piece so that, hey, if you're worried about your call quality, it's built into the solution as well. It's got to be adaptable and flexible, right? Again, if you're going to be mapping large data sets of users from one side to the other, you've got to be able to say, yeah, my office users in Timbuktu do not need what my office users in New York need, right? They don't need what my factory users need in the middle of Mexico. You've got to be able to map cleanly and in an automated fashion, and you've got to be able to say, hey, you know what? Just like in telephony, if I need to translate a number from A to B because it matches whatever regex pattern, you got to be able to do that. I can't tell you the number of times I've gone from Cisco to Teams where the username, they don't LDAP sync Cisco to Teams, so you have to take the username and try and figure out, oh, here's a regex pattern to match it to their Microsoft URI. Got to be able to do that as you're going from one batch to another. Ideally, in my perspective, it's got to be delivered from the cloud, right? Some customers, you got to be able to have it on-prem. There's just security requirements. Maybe they're DoD, maybe they're government, maybe they're heavy, restricted finance. Fine, but for the most part, it's got to be simple for you to get a hold of, right? And cloud is probably the quickest and easiest way to do. Secure, probably one of the biggest ones here. RBAC, you've got to be able to do what Microsoft doesn't let you do natively. We've got to be able to say, hey, user A can do steps 1, 2, and 3, but not any of the rest, and they need to be able to do it for this subset of users. Or, hey, maybe you're an MSP, maybe it's a multi-tenant environment. You need to be able to say, hey, engineers A, B, C, D, and D can touch these clients and these sites only. Can't do that with Microsoft. The built-in solution just doesn't allow for it. You have to have full access to their tenant when you're given Teams Administrator or Teams Communications Administrator. So the third-party solution can abstract all of that by giving it that single service account with the credential and or an application registration to do things in Azure Active Directory through Graph API, and it can then abstract all those permissions down. Really got to be able to do that. And then last but not least, your added value, right? You've got to give the customer the ability to easily work with you. So instead of us sending Excel spreadsheets back and forth, right, you got to give the customer the ability to look at what you're doing and edit it in line, right? So if you've imported the data from a legacy system, rather than sending it back and forth, they can just log in and say, oh yeah, this user's gone, or hey, this user's name is wrong, I'm just going to update it in the solution, and they can have anyone that needs to collaboratively in that process. Now what about the operator model, right? We've talked a lot about enterprise and the MSP, but what about the operator? So right now in Teams, right, we've got direct routing. You've got direct routing as a service. You've got Operator Connect. You've got Teams Mobile. You've got calling plans. Well, if you're an operator getting into the direct routing as a service and or Operator Connect model, how can this help you? Well, look at what happens on the left here. If you've got all of these different steps that have to happen from different teams and you have different APIs, it gets slow, it gets expensive. But if you can take one third-party solution that's been developed to work with the different sides, say, okay, well, you know what? Here's the information on the users. They're marked, the numbers in the inventory are marked as this is a direct routing number, this is an Operator Connect number, this is whichever type it is. You can then have the one solution say, okay, if I'm Verizon, for example, as an Operator Connect partner in the US, I can say, you know what? Boom, I'm assigning this user a number. It's going to go up my Operator Connect API to Teams, trigger it, and boom, adds it to the Teams tenant, assigns it, walks away. Or if it's direct routing or DRaaS, it can do the same thing through PowerShell, WebEx, Zoom, whatever you choose it to be. The idea is if you can have that single solution that has, from a third-party perspective, gone through and validated all of those connection options, whether it's PowerShell for Teams, whether it's an API for WebEx or Zoom. Automation gives you that ability from a single pane of glass to just say, you know what, I don't care where you're coming from or going to. I only care that I can do this and that I can have a low-cost employee make a MACD or a migration happen, right? I only need to worry about having my high-cost engineers come in and program the core. Here's where things get fun, because here's where I spend the majority of my time talking to people about, well, why would I spend the money on one of these solutions? Because, let's be honest, they're not particularly inexpensive when you first look at them. Everything's different, right? So when you're going to look at your solution, first, what is your focus, right? What are you trying to automate? Is it just a migration? Fine. fine. There are a lot of solutions out there that are going to make that a lot easier on you. You don't need all the MACDs, you don't need all the analytics, you don't need all the advanced feature sets. Fine, there are solutions for that. Are you looking for day-to-day automation? How much of it? Are you just looking for number inventory? Great. There's solutions out there that'll just do number inventory for you. Will they integrate with everything? Maybe not. Are you looking for monitoring, analytics, and reporting? Well, yeah. Well, but what are you looking for? Are you looking for just, hey, here are the users who've been enabled, here are the users who've been disabled, here's my licensing? Okay. Are you looking for call quality analysis? Are you looking for sentiment analysis? Check with each solution provider. Some have this, some don't, and some may or may not build it in. And then what's your customer base focus? I gotta be honest, between the different, end user options or what your option may be, I might recommend a different solution, right? Or within a solution, a different feature set. So if I'm an enterprise customer, what do I want from my automation solution? I want number inventory. I want easy MACD for my end users. I want self-service. I want integration into my ITSM processes so that as an API call or as a human resource procedure, I can just trigger a new user or a user removal. But as a carrier, I don't care about the HR integration, right? Unless I'm doing specialty managed services for a customer, all I care about is, hey, user turn up, user turn down. So just send me, hey, number inventory and here are my profiles on either end, or just on one end if you're not automating both. As a service provider, as an MSP, you want all the above, right? You want to be able to give your customers every single feature known to man and bill them for each feature you provide. As a small business, I want a pretty dashboard. I want something that's super easy to get into. I can sign up from a web page, give my credit card, or have an easy talk to a salesperson. It sets up super quick, and it gives me the few features I need. I need to be able to turn some users on, turn some users off. I'm probably going to be using calling plans or Operator Connect. And you know what? Done. From a modularity perspective, some of these solutions are all or nothing, right? And that works for some people. And then last but not least, are they multi-vendor? Right now we're talking about teams, but we live in a world where not all of our customers can live in teams. We wish they would, but hey, some are going to live on premise in various PBXs, some of them are going to be on Zoom, some of them are going to be on WebEx. Why can't we, from one pane of glass, manage that? That's not to say you need to have it up front, but look at the roadmaps, see what's coming. We've talked about security a bit. But how is access managed within the platform? Is it local accounts only? There are some solutions that still have local user accounts stored in unencrypted databases. They exist. Are you doing single sign-on? Great. How? Are you doing an LDAP? Not my favorite anymore, especially even with LDAPs, because you can still get man in the middle on that. Does 2FA get supported? Hey, can you do OAuth? Can you talk to Azure AD natively and just say, hey, let me just use you as my authentication provider. Let me identify which groups get which permissions and say, hey, I'm going to let Azure AD do what Azure AD does best. I'm going to let it protect me with conditional access. I'm going to let it do all my two-factor. I'm going to let it do its thing. Integrity, right? Does the solution actually show you accurate information? Does it actually show you who did what and what's going on, right? Is it live, or are you seeing hours later? We're seeing report after report after report of malware, of ransomware, of hackings. And you can be damn well sure that one of the first systems people are going to notice is down is their phone system. I mean, it's going to be email, it's going to be phone. You best be able to respond pretty damn quickly, especially if you're running a call center. I mean, Landis, tell me you don't get called immediately as soon as something goes wrong with a call center, right? It's business critical, right? And again, are they all logged for audit? Are they logged for rollback? Can I know what went wrong and fix it? And then availability, right? If it's deployed locally, what's the SLA from the provider, right? Can the provider really offer 5 nines when you're deploying it within your environment, right? Is there HA? Is there resiliency? Is there disaster recovery? How can this thing work? If it's tied into your routing environment, if it's saying, hey, SBCs, this number goes here, there, and everywhere, well, what happens if it goes down and your SBC can't contact it, right? What's that availability? And again, how robust is it, right? Some systems are literally just a server with a database, and that's it. No multiple nodes, no sharing of regions, none of it. And then again, from a functionality, how easy is it to access? When we get higher and higher in levels of complexity, we can accept less and less ease of access insofar as it doesn't have to be the prettiest interface. It doesn't have to be the most graphical, right? A lot of us are probably very commonly familiar with different command lines. So we're okay as long as it gives us a concise display of information. But depending on the customer and or self-service, is there a web interface to do this all through, right? Can I just open up a web browser and do a complete migration from source to destination and not have to worry about opening PowerShell and opening Excel and opening all my other tools, right? I love using as an example anyone who's done an Exchange migration and used BitTitan. BitTitan went from being, or Skykick, or any of the, went from being a really kludgy system to just, hey, drop this little agent on your Exchange server. We're going to suck up all your users. We're going to show you in your dashboard who's here, who's here. You're going to tell us, oh, you're going to Office 365, or you're going to Google, whatever. Boom, 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 click, boom, done. Cut my users. No Exchange hybrid, none of that stuff. Yeah, some people need Exchange hybrid, whatever. So, hey, can I do everything from an ease of access in a web interface after someone's done some initial connection to systems? Is there a mobile app? More and more, administrators in the field are saying, you know what, I've left for the day at 5 p.m., but migrations are happening at midnight. I need a notification, and I don't just want to text. I want to be able to look at the system straight from a mobile app. A lot of the systems historically were written for the desktop. They were written to show in a nice big screen, lots of tables. Is there a mobile app that makes it easy to access? Is it a legacy desktop application? Or, in this case, is it PowerShell? Is it just the command line? And then from an ease of use perspective, what's the learning curve, right? I don't want to use an automation solution that's going to take me 2 years to learn when I've got 50, 60,000 users to move in the next 6 months. I want something that's going to take me a month to deploy, validate, and I want to roll, right? And if I need service from the vendor, fine. Is the interface understandable? Sometimes it takes you a minute to learn the logic of different interfaces. Lord knows it took me forever to realize the logic of Photoshop. Once I did, it was easy to use. I had to learn the advanced functionality, but I could figure out where everything was. Is there an API, right? What if I don't want to use the interface you've provided me? What if I want to tie in and do automated provisioning through, whether it's Active Directory, whether it's through ServiceNow, right? What if I want to trigger this from a different system, either for a setup or a takedown? Do I have that option? Is there self-service? Everyone talks about self-service. How many users actually use it is a whole nother discussion. But wouldn't it be great if you could say, hey, I don't have phone service. I really would like it. Let me go fill this out, have it talk to your system, and then if you've got an ITSM, have it open a ticket in the ITSM, and if it gets approved in the ITSM, automate the enablement of it. Wouldn't that be great? Reporting, we've talked about audit logs. What about the platform stats? Is Teams up? Is all of Teams up? Are we able to reach the media endpoints? Are we able to reach the SIP gateways? I don't know. Wouldn't that be nice to know? Especially on a tenant-by-tenant basis. License feature and usage stats. How many of you have worked with a customer who has no clue how many people are actually using their features? How common a request is that, right? Now, we may be focused on telephony and phone in the Teams license environment, but that could expand very, very quickly. And then media and quality analysis. The CQD is great, but the CQD is very limited in customizability, right? You can access all of the call data and the call records through the Graph API. Wouldn't it be great if maybe the solution has all of that built in and or has its own, maybe they're using Power BI and they give you the Power BI templates. Wouldn't it be great to have some of that additional analysis available to you right out of the gate? And then last but not least, what does it support? Is it just Teams? There are some solutions out there where that's all they work with, and that's fine. And what level of integration does it work with, right? Can it talk just to users? Can it do call queues? Can it do auto attendance? Can it deal with licensing? Can it deal with Azure AD groups? Can it deal with, Tracy, I'm looking straight at you, can it deal with Intune and conditional access to do the common area phone issues or the handset issues that are so common at the big enterprise, right? And does it integrate with the routing environment? Now, I don't see Mark Vail in here anywhere, but as an easy target to pick on, because call root is here, right? They may not have soup to nuts MACD management of every system that they connect to, but hey, don't they make it easy to connect from platform to platform to platform to platform? You want to add Teams, click a button. You want to add WebEx, click a button. You want to add Zoom, click a button, right? And that adds to the routing environment, right? That connects it. But what about adding the users? What about moving the users, right? Here's the big one that all your bosses are going to ask about. What's the cost? And the big one, always, every single time, starts with how many people is it going to take to get this project done? And who are these people going to be? Now, with automation, we can slim that down a whole bunch. From a deployment model, well, hey, are we going to be having to buy servers? Do we have to put this in our data center? Do we actually have to buy something? Or hey, is it SaaS? Do we just pay per user per month, and as soon as we're done, we walk away, or if we like it a lot, we keep it? That's up to you. You can save a bunch of money, you can spend a bunch of money right there. The capital outlay, how much professional service support do we need to get this thing running? Do we have to get someone to write thousands of lines of code to make it work with our systems? Let's hope not, but sometimes you've got really funky systems. Subscription costs, well, okay. Hopefully everyone's subscribed to E5 and you're just turning on the license feature so you can actually make use of it. But hey, what are the subscription costs of that? What are the subscription costs of the ongoing use of the automation platform? And then you've got the tech silos, and I can imagine that anyone who's worked with legacy telephony, they start talking about a Teams migration from whether it's Cisco, Avaya, Mitel, Siemens, you name it. They don't want to talk about it. They don't want to lose their users. They want their jobs. And they don't want to learn a whole new system that's Microsoft, which is famous for being finicky and changing on a dime. I can understand that. So oftentimes you have to deal with the lost time in dealing with tech silos and getting executive engagement to cross that barrier. Well, what happens when we're able to automate it, give you one pane that says, hey, here's your legacy system, guys. Go play with your legacy system. Don't worry about it. Hey, you need to add a new user to our system? It's the same exact interface. You just click Teams instead of Cisco. Go. Now, that doesn't always work for some companies. They'll never break that barrier. Some companies, they may actually do that and save themselves a boatload. We've talked about deployment options, right? Does your solution go in only on-premise? Do you have to install it yourself, maintain it, pay for PS to upgrade it? Is it a one-time perpetual license cost? Can you put it in your data center as a virtual appliance? Great. Can you put it in the cloud, public or private? Is it SaaS? Well, I love SaaS just because I don't have to deal with any of the infrastructure anymore. I just have to make sure you connect and you're done. From a system type, do I get it as a virtual appliance so that every time I want to go and I want to fix it or I want to update it, I have to download this huge 3 gig app, run a major install process, hope everything goes right, and hope I don't have to restore from backup when my appliance update fails? Or is there a built-in update mechanism that just updates the various packages? Who knows? I look at certain SBC vendors. I'm trying not to look too hard at them. Server-based application. Is this just something I need a Windows or Linux server and I install the app on? Is it that simple? Great. Does that mean I can do a standard update like I could on a Windows machine? I'm not too worried about my scale then, because that means, hey, boom, 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 boom. I'm going to walk around and just, it's legacy, whatever. Container. Oh, even better, right? I can just say, hey, here's a little app that manages all my containers. All of my different, feature sets are in these containers. If I need to update one, I shut the one container down, I move around, I do whatever I need. I keep going, no major downtime. Is it a microservice? Well, hopefully, as we look at next generation solutions, and a lot of the various vendors are going for their V2, V3, V4, whatever it may be, especially in a SaaS solution, we're seeing microservices. We're saying, hey, we're going to be in Azure. We're going to take advantage of queuing. We're going to take advantage of Cassandra. We're going to take advantage of Azure Functions. We're going to take advantage of all these things. And the only thing we're really going to write is software to orchestrate it all. Really cool stuff. And it gives you that ability to go wide and up when we talk about scale. It's a lot easier to work with that, especially if you are a carrier or a service provider and saying, hey, I'm going to go from 10,000 seats to 2 million. I can work with that a lot easier. Here's where I've talked to a few customers, and this has really come out in the last year or two, especially. I don't know if Ken's in here from New Wave. No, Ken's not in here from New Wave, because New Wave and Callroot are the two I would talk about. We're seeing a lot more routing management solutions. We're seeing a lot of these, hey, get on Teams phone quickly, right? They have some UC automation pieces, but hey, they aren't actually doing platform automation. They're saying, hey, you've got AD groups, we're going to give them numbers based on this, and that's great. It makes it easy to get on board. But what if you want more or need more of those other features? Well, that's where we start talking about the differences between these different solutions. Unimax is one of the sponsors here. I want to call that out for them. Go have a talk with them. Voss, I'm here with Voss. Mark is here with Callroot. I believe his CEO is also with him. Code Software has been here every year. New Wave is here. There are a bunch of options out there that do different things. And the real question is, which one works for you? And when we look at these, this is again is asking, what features do you want? If what you want is, hey, I don't care about the routing, I'm having someone else take care of that, or my SBC crew is doing what they do, right? As long as I can say which numbers go where, they don't care, right? I can come in and say, I just need UC automation. I don't need routing automation. I don't need to talk to the SBCs. I don't need to talk to the SBC's routing engine. But then we're seeing, like I said, with call route and some of the others, hybrid automation is what I call it. And it's great because it means I can sign up on their website. I can say, whether I want them to provide me telephony or I'm going to provide a SIP trunk over the top. Great, connect, go, I'm on Teams. It doesn't give me a lot of control of Teams, but it gives me enough, especially as a quick user to get on there, that. And then if I find I need more, I can add solutions to it, right? I can say, hey, I'm going to log into my call route portal. I'm going to, give a number to a user that is in call route. Great, boom, 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 boom. Oh, wait, now I need to manage on a day-to-day based on a whole bunch of things other than Azure AD. I'm going to add another solution to that, and the beauty of things like Call Route and NewWave is they sync with Microsoft, right? So you don't have to have just one solution. Find what works best for your business in the various different automation platforms. But I'm going to go back here, and I'm just going to say every one of the people on here has something that they do differently or specially compared to the rest. I can't stress enough, before you really jump into the world of third-party automation, think what you need, right? I highly recommend going all the way. But do you just need PowerShell? Are you just doing a small environment? Are you just doing a quick cut and everything else can be done from the TAC, right? Because they're Operator Connect, they're all calling plans. Are you small enough that the Power Apps method works for you? Your licensing covers enough use of the Power Apps, your Azure functions. You're just doing the periodic user add and remove. Okay. Do you need, I'm always happy to sell you, a third-party solution, especially the one I work for, but is it the right one for you? Or your customers, right? Each one of these groups do things differently. Pingco and TCAP, NewWave, Scipio, and CallRoute are all routing people, right? Voss, Unimax, Kirby, and Code are all UC automation. Which do you need? How much of it do you need? Are you giant enterprise or are you small business? We all do things differently. Some of us we look very different, right? We have different user interfaces. And we all work with different platforms. So to conclude with all of this before I pull all up for questions, if nothing else that you take away from this, role-based access control is probably the biggest piece I want you to take away. From a security perspective, we're seeing a lot of threats starting, historically they've come from two voice systems as well, especially as they converted to IP. But with Microsoft 365 being an integrated environment, and we're seeing lots of attacks against the environment, how much can you do to restrict your users, your admins' access to the specific areas they work on? If nothing else, work on a solution that helps you there. And from a telephony perspective, maybe that's Power Apps, maybe that's a third-party solution. Start there. That would be the first place I would go, and then I would start asking, what else do I need from there? But are there questions I can answer from that side? No questions? Oh, killing me, Smalls. I guess in that case, thank you, everybody. I'm going to throw a little quiz out there. How many of you guys are service providers or MSPs? Okay. How many of you guys are representing enterprise? Okay. Government? No government folks in the office, really. Oh, just one. Okay. And then anyone here from just small business? Oh, yeah? Awesome. Welcome, everybody. If I can be of use, please give me a shout. Talk to the guys who actually sponsored the event as well. See what works for you guys. We're here to make you successful and make a little money on the side, but let us know how we can help you make your team's management and your deployments and your migrations work more efficiently and more effectively, and especially more securely. Thanks, everybody.